Ezra Cole's hands trembled as he clutched the edge of his seat. The alien ship jolted violently, sparks flying from the control panels above him. He had no idea what was happening, or why this sleek, otherworldly vessel was spiraling out of control. But one thing was certain: he wasn't supposed to be here. Just hours ago, Ezra had been repairing mining equipment on a lonely asteroid colony. Now, he found himself hurtling through space aboard an unknown craft with a mysterious and stunning alien assassin named Calith Vos Crane. Calith stood near the shattered viewport, her tall, lithe frame silhouetted against the fiery streaks of re-entry. Her skin shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, like liquid silver reflecting every flicker. She turned sharply toward Ezra, her piercing golden eyes locking onto his face. "Stay down," she commanded in fluent but accented English, her voice low and sharp, cutting through the chaos around them. Ezra didn't argue. There was something about her tone that made obedience feel like the only option. Outside, the atmosphere roared as they descended faster than Ezra thought possible. Through gaps in the smoke and flames, he caught glimpses of their destination, an uncharted moon covered in jagged cliffs and glowing forests. It looked beautiful, yet deadly. His stomach churned at the realization that survival might not even be an option. "What happened?" Ezra shouted over the deafening noise, gripping the edge of the console harder to steady himself. "We were ambushed," Calith replied without looking at him. Her focus remained on the controls, though it seemed futile now. Whatever had hit them had done its job well. "Someone knew we were coming." "Us? Why would anyone care about me?" Ezra asked, panic rising in his chest. He wasn't important, just a mechanic trying to get by in the farthest reaches of human territory. But before Calith could answer, another violent impact sent them both crashing into the wall. Alarms blared louder than ever, red lights flashing wildly across the cabin. When the shaking subsided, Ezra pushed himself up, groaning in pain. His head throbbed, and blood trickled down his temple. Still, he forced himself to move, crawling toward the exit hatch. The crash may have stopped, but staying inside felt worse than stepping out into the unknown. Calith joined him moments later, moving with eerie grace despite the situation. She carried a small device strapped to her wrist. A weapon, Ezra guessed, and scanned the area outside cautiously. "We need to leave. Now." Pushing open the hatch, they stepped onto the foreign landscape together. The air smelled strange, metallic and tinged with sweetness. Bioluminescent plants illuminated the ground in soft hues of blue and green, casting eerie shadows across the rocky terrain. Above them, the sky burned orange with streaks of black clouds rolling ominously closer. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply stared at each other, two vastly different beings bound by circumstance. Ezra, disheveled and scared, met Calith's cold gaze. For all her beauty, she radiated danger, every movement deliberate and calculated. Yet deep within those golden eyes, Ezra saw something else, a hint of uncertainty, perhaps even fear. "Where do we go now?" Ezra finally asked, breaking the silence. Calith glanced at the horizon, where towering cliffs loomed menacingly. "Anywhere but here," she said flatly. Then, after a pause, she added, "If you want to live, follow me." And with that, she began walking, leaving Ezra little choice but to keep pace. As they ventured deeper into the alien wilderness, one truth became painfully clear. They were stranded, alone, and completely dependent on each other for survival. The repaired ship hummed with life as Ezra and Calith prepared for takeoff. The enemy vessels loomed closer, their searchlights cutting through the dark skies above the moon's surface. Time was running out, and every second felt heavier than the last. Inside the cockpit, Calith worked quickly, her fingers flying over the alien controls while Ezra stood awkwardly behind her, unsure of what to say. "Are you sure about this?" Ezra finally asked, breaking the tense silence. "Faking my death. It's risky." "It's necessary," Calith replied without looking up. Her voice was firm, but carried a trace of sadness. If they think you're dead, they won't come after you. You'll have a chance to start over. And what about you? Ezra pressed. What happens when they find out you lied? Caliph paused, her hands hovering over the console. For a moment, she seemed lost in thought. Then, with a resigned sigh, she turned to face him. I'll deal with it. My people, they don't forgive easily. But I've made my choice. Ezra wanted to argue, to tell her there had to be another way. But he saw the resolve in her golden eyes, the same determination that had kept them alive through every trial. He swallowed hard, nodding silently. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. Kelith wasn't just an assassin anymore. She was someone who had risked everything, not just for herself, but for him. The ship roared to life, lifting off the ground just as the first enemy vessel descended nearby. Kelith expertly maneuvered the craft, weaving between jagged cliffs and glowing forests until they reached the edge of the moon's atmosphere. As they broke free into the vast expanse of space, Ezra watched the view screen intently, his heart pounding. Behind them, the enemy ships hesitated, scanning the area before retreating. They bought it, Kelith said quietly, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For now. Ezra sank into the co-pilot's seat, staring at her profile. Thank you, he murmured, for everything. Caliph didn't respond immediately. Instead, she set a course for a distant star system, far enough away to ensure Ezra's safety, but close enough for her to disappear without detection. When the coordinates were locked in, she turned to him, her expression unreadable. This is where we part ways, she said simply. Once we reach the drop point, you'll leave the ship. Find somewhere safe to rebuild your life. What about you? Ezra asked, his voice tinged with desperation. Where will you go? That's not your concern, Caliph replied, though her tone softened slightly. Just promise me one thing. Don't look back. Keep moving forward. Before Ezra could protest further, the ship shuddered as it entered orbit around a small, desolate planet. Caliph guided it toward a landing site hidden beneath rocky terrain. Once the engines powered down, she handed him a small device, a translator module she'd salvaged from the wreckage. This might help you communicate if you run into trouble, she explained. It's all I can give you. Ezra took it reluctantly, his fingers brushing against hers briefly. Will I ever see you again? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Caliph hesitated, her usual composure faltering. Then, with a faint smile that barely reached her eyes, she said, maybe, if fate allows it. Without another word, she ushered him out of the ship, watching as he disappeared into the barren landscape below. Once he was gone, she returned to the cockpit, setting a new course for parts unknown. As the stars stretched into streaks of light, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. For the first time in her life, she had acted not out of duty or orders, but because it was right. Far below, Ezra stood atop a ridge, gazing up at the fading trail of the ship. Though separated by countless miles, he felt a strange connection to Caliph, a bond forged in survival, trust, and sacrifice. Somewhere deep inside, he vowed to uncover the truth about her past, and perhaps someday find her again. As the universe sprawled endlessly before them, both Ezra and Caliph embarked on separate journeys, forever changed by the time they spent together. Their story may have ended here, but their paths were far from over. The corridors of the ancient structure twisted and turned like a maze, their walls lined with glowing veins of crystal that pulsed faintly as if alive. Ezra couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by Caliph, but by something far older and more powerful. The air grew heavier with every step, pressing down on them like an unseen force. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, Caliph moved forward confidently, her sharp eyes scanning for traps or threats. Ezra, however, lagged behind, his mind racing with questions. So, this AI thing, he began hesitantly, breaking the silence. Do you think it's friendly? Or is it just another danger we need to deal with? Caliph glanced over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. It depends on what friendly means to you. These kinds of AIs don't care about individuals. They only care about completing their purpose. And what's its purpose? Ezra pressed. To protect whatever was left here by its creators, Caliph replied curtly. She didn't elaborate further, leaving Ezra to piece together the implications himself. As they continued deeper, the corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with towering machines that hummed softly, suspended in midair as though defying gravity. In the center stood a massive construct, a mechanical guardian shaped like a humanoid figure, at least 20 feet tall, with limbs reinforced by glowing energy cores. Its headless torso swiveled toward them, locking onto their presence. "This must be the first trial," Caliph murmured, her hand instinctively moving to the weapon strapped to her wrist. Her golden eyes flickered with determination, though Ezra noticed the slightest hint of unease in her stance. "What do we do?" Ezra asked, gripping the makeshift metal rod he'd carried since their crash landing. It felt pitiful compared to the towering machine before them. "We fight," Caliph said simply. Without waiting for a response, she darted forward, her movements fluid and calculated. The construct reacted instantly, raising one massive arm to strike. Caliph rolled out of the way just in time, firing a concentrated beam from her wrist device that struck the construct's chest. Sparks flew, but the machine barely faltered. Ezra hesitated, unsure how to contribute against such a formidable opponent. Then inspiration struck. Remembering the terrain they'd crossed earlier, he spotted a weak point in the chamber's ceiling, a cluster of jagged rocks hanging precariously above the construct. If they could bring those down, maybe they could disable the machine. "Caliph," Ezra shouted, pointing upward. "Distract it. I've got an idea." She didn't question him, trusting his judgment enough to keep the construct occupied while he scrambled up a nearby ledge. Using all his strength, Ezra pried loose one of the larger rocks, sending it crashing down onto the construct's shoulder. The impact caused the machine to stagger, giving Caliph the opening she needed. She fired repeatedly at its exposed joints until one of its arms detached completely, clattering to the ground with a deafening clang. But the construct wasn't done yet. With surprising speed, it launched a counterattack, forcing both Ezra and Caliph to dive out of the way. Ezra landed hard, wincing as pain shot through his side. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if they couldn't win? Then Caliph shouted, "Now, Ezra." Summoning every ounce of courage, Ezra hurled another rock directly at the construct's core. This time, the blow was fatal. The machine shuddered violently before collapsing into a heap of smoking metal. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the sound of their labored breathing. "Well," Ezra said between gasps, "that was fun." Caliph allowed herself a rare smirk. Not bad, for a human. Before they could celebrate, the chamber began to shift again. A portion of the floor slid open, revealing a glowing key embedded in the ground. As Ezra picked it up, the AI's voice echoed once more. "Trial 1 complete. Proceed to the next challenge." Exchanging wary glances, Ezra and Caliph knew their journey was far from over. But for now, they had proven they could work together and survive. The next corridor was narrower than the ones before, its walls lined with jagged crystals that cast sharp reflections of Ezra and Caliph as they walked. The oppressive silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the faint hum of energy coursing through the ancient structure. Though they had survived the trial of illusions together, an unspoken tension lingered in the air. Trust was fragile, built on moments of necessity rather than genuine connection. Ezra couldn't shake the image of Caliph's haunted expression during the last trial, the way her voice had wavered when she confronted her past. It made him wonder how much of what she'd told him was true. Was she truly stranded like him, or was there more to her story? His suspicions deepened when he noticed her speaking softly under her breath in her native tongue, her glowing wrist device flickering intermittently. "What are you doing?" Ezra asked suddenly, his tone sharper than he intended. Caliph paused mid-step, turning to face him. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly, defensive. "Nothing," she replied coolly. "Why?" "You've been acting strange ever since we left that chamber," Ezra pressed, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "And don't think I didn't notice you talking to yourself, or whatever it is you're doing." For a moment, Caliph hesitated, her usual composure faltering. Then, with a sigh, she admitted, "I've been receiving transmissions." "Transmissions," Ezra repeated, his heart sinking. "From who? Your people?" "Yes," she said after a pause. "They know where we are. This moon, it's transmitting our location." Ezra felt a surge of anger mixed with betrayal. "You knew about this and didn't tell me. What else are you hiding?" "It doesn't matter," Caliph snapped, her voice rising for the first time. "If my superiors find us, neither of us will make it out alive. My mission failed because of you. I'm already marked as expendable." Her words hit Ezra like a punch to the gut. He took a step back, trying to process what she was saying. "So what now? You're just going to leave me here while you save yourself?" "No," Caliph said firmly, though her tone softened. "I stayed because I need your help to survive this. But if we don't get off this moon soon, none of it will matter." Before Ezra could respond, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A low rumble echoed through the corridor, growing louder with each passing second. The crystals embedded in the walls began to crack, sending shards scattering across the floor. "We need to move," Caliph shouted, grabbing Ezra's arm and pulling him forward. They sprinted down the narrow passage, dodging falling debris as the structure seemed to collapse around them. Behind them, the AI's voice boomed once again. "Time is running out. Complete the final trial or face permanent entrapment." The corridor opened into another massive chamber, this one filled with floating platforms suspended over a seemingly bottomless chasm. At the far end stood a glowing portal, their only way out. But between them and freedom lay yet another obstacle, a swarm of mechanical drones, their red sensors locking onto Ezra and Caliph instantly. "This must be the last trial," Ezra muttered, gripping his makeshift weapon tightly. Caliph nodded, her expression grim. "Stay close. We'll have to fight our way through." As the drones descended, Ezra and Caliph moved in perfect sync, their earlier mistrust momentarily forgotten. Caliph fired precise shots from her wrist device, disabling several drones at once, while Ezra used his quick thinking to knock others off balance, sending them plummeting into the abyss below. Despite their efforts, the sheer number of enemies threatened to overwhelm them. Just as exhaustion began to take its toll, Caliph spotted a control panel near the edge of the chamber. "Ezra, cover me," she yelled, darting toward it. Ezra fought desperately to hold off the remaining drones, his arms aching with every swing of his weapon. Finally, Caliph reached the panel and activated it, causing the platforms to shift and create a pathway to the portal. "Go," she shouted, motioning for him to run. "What about you?" Ezra demanded, unwilling to leave her behind. "I'll follow. Just go," Caliph insisted, firing one last shot to clear the way. With no time to argue, Ezra sprinted toward the portal, leaping onto the shifting platforms. As he reached the threshold, he turned back to see Caliph fighting off the final wave of drones. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Her golden gaze filled with determination, his wide with relief and gratitude. Then, with a final leap, she joined him, and together, they stepped through the portal, leaving the crumbling chamber behind. Whatever awaited them next, they would face it side by side. But Ezra couldn't shake the feeling that Caliph's secrets were far from over. By the third day on the moon, Ezra and Caliph had fallen into an uneasy rhythm. They traveled in silence for the most part, speaking only when necessary. Ezra focused on navigating the treacherous terrain while Caliph kept a vigilant eye out for danger. Despite their growing reliance on each other, trust remained scarce. Every glance, every word felt loaded with unspoken tension. It was during one of their stops that Ezra noticed something unusual, a series of strange symbols carved into the side of a massive rock. At first glance, they looked like random scratches, but upon closer inspection, he realized they formed intricate patterns. The designs pulsed faintly with a soft blue light, almost as if alive. "What's this?" Ezra asked, tracing his fingers over the markings. His curiosity got the better of him. "Do you know what it means?" Caliph stepped closer, her sharp eyes scanning the symbols. For a moment, she hesitated, her usual composure flickering. Then, without answering, she moved past him, brushing aside vines covering another section of the rock. Beneath them lay more symbols, and beyond that, the entrance to a hidden chamber. "This place, it wasn't made by nature," Caliph said quietly, her voice tinged with both awe and suspicion. She glanced back at Ezra. "Stay close." Inside the chamber, the air grew colder, and the walls shimmered with veins of glowing crystal. In the center stood a pedestal holding an object that seemed to hum with energy. It was small, no larger than Ezra's hand, and shaped like a teardrop. Its surface shifted colors depending on how the light hit it: gold, green, then deep violet. Ezra reached for it instinctively, but Caliph grabbed his wrist before he could touch it. "Don't," she warned sharply. "You don't know what it does." "Then why are we here?" Ezra shot back, pulling his arm free. "We're stuck on this moon with nothing but questions. Maybe this is our way off." Caliph sighed, her expression softening slightly. For the first time since they'd met, she looked uncertain. "Fine, but let me handle it." As she approached the artifact, memories flooded her mind. Images of her training, the countless lives she'd taken in the name of duty. She clenched her jaw, pushing the thoughts aside. Carefully, she extended her hand toward the object. When her fingers brushed its surface, the chamber erupted in light. A low hum filled the air, resonating through the walls. Suddenly, a holographic figure appeared before them. An ethereal being with elongated limbs and translucent skin. Its voice echoed not just in their ears, but in their minds. "Who dares disturb the resting place of the sentinels?" Ezra stumbled backward, startled. What is that?" "It's the AI," Caliph murmured, her tone betraying a hint of recognition. Her people had legends about ancient guardians like this, though she'd never believed them until now. The AI turned its gaze toward Ezra. "You are human. Your kind has not set foot here in millennia." Then it focused on Caliph. "And you, Valari. Assassin. Why have you come?" Caliph straightened, her demeanor shifting to one of defiance. "I didn't choose to be here. My ship was attacked, and I crash-landed. This human is with me." The AI paused, as if processing their words. "Very well. You may leave, if you prove yourselves worthy." Before either could respond, the chamber began to shift. The walls rearranged themselves, forming corridors leading deeper underground. The AI's voice rang out once more. "Complete the trials ahead. Fail, and you will remain trapped forever." Ezra exchanged a worried glance with Caliph. "Trials? What does that even mean?" "It means we don't have a choice," Caliph replied grimly. She tightened the strap on her wrist device and started down the newly formed path. "Come on. We've survived worse." As they ventured further into the labyrinthine structure, Ezra couldn't shake the feeling that Caliph knew more than she let on. Finally, unable to hold back, he blurted out, "Why were you really on that ship? Don't give me some vague answer this time." Caliph stopped mid-step, her shoulders stiffening. After a long pause, she turned to face him. "I was sent to kill someone. Someone involved in experiments. On humans. Including you." Ezra's breath caught in his throat. "Me? Why would anyone want to experiment on me?" "I don't know all the details," Caliph admitted, her voice softer now. "But my mission failed when the ship was attacked. Now, I'm as stranded as you are." For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of her confession hung heavy between them. Ezra wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but something in Calith's expression stopped him. She wasn't lying. Not completely, anyway. Guess we're both prisoners of circumstance, Ezra finally said, forcing a weak smile. Calith nodded, her golden eyes reflecting the dim light of the crystals around them. Let's hope these trials don't make things worse. With the glowing key secured, Ezra and Calith ventured deeper into the labyrinthine structure, their footsteps echoing in the dimly lit corridors. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in around them, pulsing faintly with an eerie blue light. Neither spoke. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on their minds. They had survived the first trial through sheer determination and teamwork, but they both knew the next challenge would test more than just their physical strength. The corridor opened into a vast chamber unlike anything they'd seen before. It was round, with smooth black walls that reflected distorted images of themselves. In the center stood a pedestal identical to the one they had encountered earlier, but this time it held two objects instead of one. Two crystalline orbs, each glowing faintly. One emitted a warm golden hue, while the other shimmered with a cold, silvery light. As they approached cautiously, the AI's voice resonated once again. You have reached the second trial. Here you will face your innermost fears and doubts. To proceed, you must overcome them, not alone, but together. Ezra frowned, glancing at Calith. What does that even mean? Overcome our fears together. Calith didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lingered on the orbs, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said quietly, it means illusions. This place will try to break us by showing us things we don't want to see. Before Ezra could respond, the room shifted. The walls dissolved into swirling mist, and suddenly, they were no longer standing in the chamber. Instead, they found themselves back in familiar yet haunting settings, places pulled straight from their memories. For Ezra, it was the mining colony where he'd been abducted. He saw his coworkers lying motionless on the ground, their faces frozen in terror. Shadows moved at the edges of his vision, whispering accusations. You ran, they hissed. You left them behind. Panic gripped him as he tried to move, but his legs felt like lead. No, I didn't run, he shouted, his voice trembling. I couldn't do anything. Nearby, Calith faced her own nightmare. She stood in the sterile training facility of her people, surrounded by holographic projections of those she had killed. Their lifeless eyes bore into her, accusing her of betrayal. You followed orders without question, one voice said bitterly. How many lives did you destroy? Another added, you're nothing but a weapon. Calith clenched her fists, trying to block out the voices, but they only grew louder, drowning her in guilt. Through the haze, Ezra noticed Calith struggling. Despite everything, he couldn't ignore the pain etched across her usually stoic features. Summoning what little courage he had left, he forced himself to move toward her. Calith, he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. Snap out of it. None of this is real. Her head jerked up, her golden eyes meeting his. For a moment, uncertainty flickered in her gaze, but then she nodded sharply, grounding herself. Returning the favor, she stepped closer to Ezra, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. And neither is yours, she said firmly. Focus on me. Don't let it control you. Together, they fought against the illusions, refusing to succumb to the fear and doubt being hurled at them. Slowly, the visions began to fade, replaced by the stark reality of the chamber. The orbs on the pedestal pulsed brighter, responding to their resilience. You have proven your ability to trust and support one another, the AI announced. Proceed. Breathing heavily, Ezra and Calith exchanged a glance, wordless understanding passing between them. They had faced their inner demons and survived. But as they moved forward, they couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest challenges were still to come. The portal spat them out into a cavernous chamber unlike any they'd encountered before. The walls shimmered with iridescent patterns that shifted like liquid, and the air hummed with an almost unbearable energy. At the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure pulsating with light. Its surface etched with intricate symbols Ezra recognized from earlier in their journey. This was it, the final trial. "This is where we prove ourselves," Caliph said, her voice steady despite the tension radiating off her. She glanced at Ezra, her golden eyes flickering with something he couldn't quite place. Resolve, perhaps, or regret. Before either could move closer to the crystal, the AI's voice boomed through the chamber. "You have reached the culmination of your trials. To leave this moon, you must confront your true selves and make a choice." "What kind of choice?" Ezra asked warily, his grip tightening on his makeshift weapon. The AI didn't answer directly. Instead, the chamber began to change around them. The glowing walls dissolved into two separate scenes, one for Ezra, one for Caliph. They were no longer standing side by side but trapped in individual visions. For Ezra, the illusion transported him back to Earth, a place he hadn't seen in years. He stood in his childhood home, surrounded by family photos and familiar scents. His mother sat at the kitchen table, smiling warmly as she always had. "Ezra," she said softly, "why are you still risking your life? Come home." Tears welled up in his eyes. The longing to stay, to abandon everything and return to the safety of his old life, was overwhelming. But deep down, he knew it wasn't real. His family was gone, lost to time and circumstance. This was just another test. Meanwhile, Caliph faced her own torment. She found herself standing in the grand hall of her people's council, surrounded by Valeri elders who stared at her with cold disdain. One elder stepped forward, his voice cutting like ice. "You have disgraced us, Caliph. Your failure has jeopardized our plans. Choose now. Redeem yourself by eliminating the human, or face exile forever." Caliph clenched her fists, her jaw tightening. The weight of her duty pressed down on her, threatening to crush her resolve. But then, she remembered Ezra's unwavering determination, his willingness to trust her even when she gave him every reason not to. For the first time in her life, she questioned the orders she had lived by. As both struggled against their illusions, the AI interjected again. "Your choices define you. Will you act alone, or will you unite?" Suddenly, the visions merged, forcing Ezra and Caliph back into the same reality. They stood facing each other, the pulsating crystal between them. Without hesitation, Ezra spoke. "I'm not leaving without you," he said firmly. "Whatever happens next, we do it together." Caliph hesitated, her emotions warring within her. Then, with a deep breath, she nodded. Agreed. They approached the crystal together, placing their hands on its surface simultaneously. A surge of energy coursed through them, merging their thoughts and memories. Ezra saw flashes of Caliph's past, the rigorous training, the countless lives taken under orders, the loneliness that came with being a weapon. In turn, Caliph glimpsed fragments of Ezra's life, the loss of his family, the isolation of working on distant colonies, his unyielding hope for a better future. When the connection broke, they stumbled backward, gasping for air. The AI's voice echoed once more. "You have proven yourselves worthy. Your bond transcends fear and doubt. You may leave." But before they could celebrate, alarms blared outside the chamber. Enemy ships descended upon the moon, their scanners locking onto their location. Caliph cursed under her breath. "We're out of time." Ezra looked at her, panic rising. "What do we do?" Caliph made a decision. "Listen carefully. When we get to the ship, you need to hide. If anyone asks, I killed you during the crash. It's the only way to keep you safe." "What?" "No," Ezra protested, stepping closer. "I won't let you." "It's not about what you want," Caliph interrupted, her tone softening. "It's about survival, for both of us." Reluctantly, Ezra nodded, realizing she was right. As they raced toward their repaired ship, the gravity of her sacrifice settled over him. Whatever happened next, he vowed to find her again, even if it meant defying fate itself. The moon was alive in ways Ezra couldn't have imagined. Every step they took seemed to awaken the environment, as if the ground itself were watching them. The glowing plants pulsed brighter when they passed, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across their path. Caliph moved ahead with purpose, her long strides eating up the uneven terrain effortlessly. Ezra struggled to keep up, his boots slipping on loose rocks and sharp edges. "Slow down," Ezra called out, frustration creeping into his voice. "I'm not built for this kind of thing." Caliph stopped abruptly but didn't turn around. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. "If you can't keep up, stay behind," she said coolly. "But don't expect me to wait." Ezra gritted his teeth. He hated how dismissive she sounded, but he also knew she wasn't wrong. They had no time to waste. Whatever, or whoever, had attacked their ship might still be looking for them. Survival depended on staying alert and moving forward. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply, and the bioluminescent plants dimmed until only faint glimmers remained. That's when the real danger began. A low growl echoed through the darkness, followed by the sound of something large rustling through the bushes nearby. Ezra froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, clutching a piece of metal he'd salvaged from the wreckage. A makeshift weapon. Caliph crouched low, her hand hovering near the device trapped to her wrist. "Quiet," she hissed, her entire body tensed, ready to strike at a moment's notice. From the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything Ezra had ever seen. It looked like a cross between a wolf and some kind of insect, its body covered in chitinous armor that gleamed under the dim light. Its multiple eyes locked onto them, reflecting an unnatural intelligence. Before Ezra could react, the creature lunged. Instinctively, he swung the metal rod, hitting it squarely on one side of its armored head. The blow stunned it momentarily, giving Caliph the opening she needed. With lightning-fast reflexes, she activated her wrist device, firing a concentrated beam of energy that struck the creature squarely in the chest. It let out a piercing shriek before collapsing to the ground, motionless. Breathing heavily, Ezra stared at the fallen beast, then at Caliph. "Thanks," he muttered, lowering his makeshift weapon. She didn't respond immediately, instead scanning the area for more threats. When she finally spoke, her tone was clipped. "You're lucky I didn't leave you behind. I did my part." Ezra shot back, irritation bubbling to the surface. "If anything, you should thank me. I distracted it." Caliph turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Ezra thought she might snap at him again, but instead, she gave a slight nod. "Fine, you're not completely useless." It wasn't much, but coming from her, it felt like progress. They pressed on, finding shelter beneath an overhang of jagged rock. As they settled in for the night, Caliph kept watch while Ezra tried to rest. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him. His mind raced with questions about their predicament, and about Caliph. Who was she really? Why had she been on that ship? And what did she want with him? Unable to stay silent any longer, Ezra broke the quiet. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Caliph didn't answer right away. She stared out into the darkness, her posture rigid. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not helping you. I'm helping myself. If we survive this, maybe there's something in it for both of us." Her words left Ezra uneasy. What exactly did she mean? Was she using him? Or was there more to her story than she let on? Before he could ask, Caliph interrupted his thoughts. "Get some rest," she ordered softly. "Tomorrow will be worse." Ezra lay back against the cold stone, staring up at the alien sky. Despite everything, one thing was clear. Whether they trusted each other or not, they needed each other to survive. And as strange as it seemed, that fragile connection might just be enough to keep them alive. For now.